Welcome to the Unreal Engine Games to Motivate You series, where I show you 5 amazing Unreal games per episode and give you some insight on how they were developed and how they performed. In this episode we got StayAtHomeDev as a special guest, and his videos talking about Godot indie games actually inspired me to start this series. So hey, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, it's StayAtHomeDev. Thanks to Cobra for inviting me to join in this video. I actually started in Unreal Engine, so it's kind of cool to talk about these games. I'm an indie game developer and stay-at-home dad, and about 2.5 years ago I started my own YouTube channel focusing on the Godot engine. And every single week for the past 2 years, I've showcased indie games made in Godot. Super excited to talk about some Unreal games. I'll catch you later in the video.
Number 5.
The Pathless is an adventure game putting you in the shoes of a hunter, exploring a vast open world and ridding it of corruption with help from your eagle companion. It was created by the indie studio Giant Squid, who put themselves on the map with Abzu in 2016. Both games were developed using Unreal Engine 4 and feature a lot of similarities to Journey and Flow, given that they share the same art director in Matt Neva and also many other employees who previously worked on these titles. In an Unreal Engine project spotlight, Matt mentions how in pre-production, Unreal allowed him to establish the foundation for the Pathless by himself through prototyping, despite being a visually oriented person and not a programmer. And even programmers on their team would heavily utilize blueprints for fast iteration and quick prototyping, and later convert performance-crucial parts to C++ while also relying on source code access. With all of Giant Squid's game featuring a very distinct and artsy look, being able to create advanced shaders quickly was very important to them. And they mentioned that Unreal's material graph was perfect for this, since it took the burden off the programmers and allowed artists to work independently for the most part. Matt also mentioned how instead of spending countless hours on creating a game engine by themselves, they'd rather focus on making the actual game. And with the Pathless reaching an estimated gross revenue of almost $1 million on Steam alone, while also being available on pretty much every other modern platform, this approach seemed to have worked out for them.
Number 4.
On Guard is a swashbuckling action-adventure game set in 17th century Spain, and it utilizes Unreal Engine 5.1. It started out as a graduation project by 8 students of the sub-info game Rubica game dev school in France, still utilizing Unreal 4 at the time. Despite not looking as polished and vibrant as the Steam release, the student project version was already very impressive, gaining multiple awards, interest from investors, and it even got covered by Jacksepticeye.
Hey, that worked!
Well, the team at first didn't think of doing anything more with On Guard and eventually moved on to working on other game dev jobs for 2 years. They did eventually come together again to found Fireplace Games and make a commercial version of the game. The core of the game stayed the same, with the free-flow combat and swashbuckling action fantasy being the main focus. But being more experienced with game development, the team was able to improve upon pretty much every aspect of On Guard. For instance, the visuals of the commercial version are much more stylized and vibrant, and it also incorporates some simple cutscenes, created through the sequencer to tell the story more effectively. And outside of the roughly 4 hours story mode, the full release also offers an arena mode, adding to the replay value. On Guard was officially revealed at the Future Game Show 2023, and its demo version did amazingly well during Steam Next Fest in June 2023. Ranking 18th in unique player count. On Steam, On Guard currently has very positive reviews and has also been a financial success.
Number 3.
Ahead in Time is an extremely successful 3D platformer inspired by Nintendo 64 and GameCube titles, which was created with Unreal Engine 3, or rather UDK. Considering how stylized and colorful Ahead in Time looks, UE3, which is famous for very dark and grey games like Gears of War and the Batman Arkham series, is probably not the first engine that comes to mind, and when I first saw the game, I just assumed it was made in Unity. It started out as a simple hobby project by Jonas Karolev, who taught himself game development through modding Source Engine games, and then made the switch to the Unreal Development Kit, which instantly clicked with him. Realizing the potential of his prototype, he reached out to a few friends who helped out with the development, eventually leading to a Kickstarter campaign that reached almost $300,000. And that is 10 times as much as the initial funding goal. This will allow him and his friends to work on the game full-time and polish their skills over the roughly 5-year-long development, but also hire on some experienced artists and composers. This also led to them expanding the scope of the game, and it ended up being an extreme success with an estimated gross revenue of $18 million on Steam alone, while also being available on the Xbox One, PS4 and Switch. There's a 7-year-old but still great interview with Jonas Karolev on Beta64's YouTube channel that gives more insight on the development process of the title. Jonas mentions how A Hat in Time was created with a mix of C++ and Unreal Script, with Unreal Script actually being his favorite programming or scripting language, stating that it had many convenient and interesting features. Interestingly enough, A Hat in Time is still receiving updates to this day, and it's funny to think about that somebody out there is writing Unreal Engine 3 code right now.
Number 2.
The Forgotten City started out as a Skyrim mod, created by a solo developer called Nick Pierce. Even though he spent roughly 1,700 hours working on this project over the course of 3 years, he mostly just wanted to make a game he himself would enjoy playing, and was blown away by the overwhelmingly positive reception after releasing it in 2015. Now, his Skyrim mod was downloaded over 3.7 million times, and was given an award by the National Writers Guild. Seeing just how many players were interested in his narrative RPG prompted him to actually quit his job and turn the Forgotten City into a standalone game. After experimenting with various game engines, he chose Unreal Engine 4 because, in his opinion, it made creating the environments more intuitive. Given the scope of the project and the fact that he had to rebuild all of the RPG elements and dialogue systems that just came with Skyrim, he teamed up with a programmer and artist to form his studio, Modern Storyteller. The development process took 4.5 grueling years, and they had to overcome a lot of obstacles. Considering the Forgotten City's strong focus on narrative, creating facial animations and lip sync for NPCs proved to be the biggest problem, since their team didn't actually have an animator. At first, they tried using iClone to motion capture the animations by themselves, and while they worked out great for other titles such as Bright Memory, it just wasn't good enough for a narrative-based game. But through some feedback from an acquaintance working at Obsidian, they opted for a modular facial animation system which ended up fitting their needs a lot better. In addition to private savings, a grant from Phil Victoria and an Epic Mega Grant extended their runway enough to find a publisher in Dear Villagers, allowing them to see this project through to the end. When The Forgotten City was eventually released in 2021, it was highly praised by both players and critics, and it shows that even with just 3 developers, you can create a highly impactful and successful game.
Number 1.
Christmas Luke is a small game created using Unreal Engine 5.0, which is available for free on Steam and got roughly 4,000 downloads with very positive reviews. You control a little penguin sliding down a mountain on its belly, who speeds up on ice but gets slowed down when touching snowed over areas. And it does remind me a little bit of Pen Pen Tricelon on the Sega Dreamcast. Outside of making your way to the bottom of the mountain, you also want to collect scarves, which you can give to your little penguin buddies to increase your score. Christmas Luke is a very short game that can be played through in roughly 5 to 10 minutes, but the mix between the low poly voxel assets and great looking reflections on the ice make it worth checking out for the visual spectacle alone. It's using Lumen Global Illumination, which can clearly be seen by these particle effects lighting up the environment through their emissive color. But since this is UE 5.0 and Lumen was still much less stable than nowadays, you can clearly see ghosting and other artifacts which aren't as pronounced with newer versions. Using a lot of new UE 5 features when they were still fresh, the game chugs along at 20 to 30 FPS on the Steam Deck with everything set to max. But with anti-aliasing set to FXAA instead of TSR, and Lumen Global Illumination set to the lowest level, we can get quite close to a stable 60 FPS. Despite these technical issues, I believe it's a very charming and fun little game, and based on the positive reviews and amount of downloads, players seem to agree. This also shows that you can really just make a small Unreal game and put it out for free to get some feedback and get into the groove of finishing games, since making a big commercial game right from the get-go can often be a daunting task. But you'd probably want to put a bit more effort into optimization and turn off heavy features that aren't crucial. And that's all the games for this episode.
Thanks for watching, and if you want to see some games made in the Gato engine, check out my weekly series, This Week in Gato, which features hundreds of games made in the Gato engine.